Hey everyone, Piano Man Chuck here. I'm here today with the Nord Piano 6, and I am sorry about waiting so long to get this reviewed. I've had two immediate family deaths that I had to deal with in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, two family members gone, just like that. Anyway, when that happened, I wound up spending every single day being comforted by playing this for myself. And it really did help. And I want to mention, and I mentioned it before, of all the piano, and I mean all the pianos that I've ever played, the Nord is the only one that has such a finger-to-ear connection. It's different. I have not experienced that with just about any other brand. Well, there's other brands that sound great and the feel is great, but together it's lacking what I'm experiencing with this. So playing that for myself every day, just getting lost with this, has done tremendous value for me, and that has really helped. And anybody that has not played one of these, if you can get to your local retailer and try it, it really, really is something special. So I think you'll agree once you try that out. Now, the Nord Piano 6 is the successor to the Nord Piano 5. And between the Nord Piano 5 and 6, they released the Nord Grand 2. So a lot of what they've put into the Nord Grand 2 has also been transferred to here. And of course, this does even more. Every iteration, whether it's the Grand or the Piano series, does a lot more. So, aside from the usual, I'm sure you've seen other videos out there about this. You know, they've gotten rid of the A, B, where you have to choose A, and then you're dealing with a volume control for that and everything else for A. And you switch to B for your second piano. That same volume control, that knob, is now applied to that. So unless you're keeping track of which one has the focus, it's hard to kind of remember what you're going on. There's a little LED light to help you with that, but still, the biggest thing that they could have done for in that area is putting physical sliders up there. So now you have two physical sliders for the piano section and two for the sample synth section. So right now you can see I've got layer A, or A, on. And if I turn that off and turn on a B, I got a white Grand here. Let's see. You know, I already had one there. Okay, let's make this one just a little bit different. Yeah, make that a Royal Grand. And when I have them both on, so you can see, and you can adjust the volume. Unlike a knob where you need two fingers to do that, you just need one finger to adjust the slider, and you can actually use two fingers to control both of them at the same time. So definite advantages there. I love the idea of having separate sliders. It's just like having a mixing console, and of course every channel is different. Now, the goal of this video is basically to summarize what's new in the Nord Piano 6 from its predecessor. But I'm going to go on, since this is a Nord Piano series, Piano 6, we're going to cover the piano section in detail here, and it's going to be very thorough. So, do other videos that cover all the rest of these, but I think we're going to focus on the piano section today. Now, let's talk about what's new. We've got new features here. Just like the Piano 5, this comes in two flavors, the 88 key and 73 key. They're both the same key action, it's just the number of keys is different. So it's triple sensor, hammer action, fully weighted. It feels wonderful. And aside from the obvious with the panel layout, the sliders instead of a single knob for each piano. You just have to switch between A and B and realize which one that you're focusing on. So I do want to mention that in addition to piano, the sample synth section, there's hundreds of sounds in there too. People don't usually talk about that so much, but it is just like almost any other stage piano that offers a ton of other sounds. And if you don't find what you're looking for, there's always the Nord website where you can download new sounds and install that here. In fact, they made their Nord Sound Manager application so much easier. So it used to be you had to get online, find the sounds you want, download it to your computer, and then you can use the Nord Sound Manager to update this board. Now you don't even have to get onto their website. It's all integrated into the Sound Manager program at this point. So how cool is that? And if you don't find what you're looking for at the Nord website with all the sounds and everything, you go to the Nord user forums, and there are thousands of different sounds and instruments and everything that people have come up with on their own and managed to upload it there. So it's available for everyone. And again, there's also Nord Sample Manager, where you can create your own sounds and then put them on here. I mean, you can take a microphone and basically record anything. It doesn't have to be musical instruments. It could be a garbage disposal or a toilet flushing, and then it'll spread the pitch all across the keyboard. I mentioned you've got 2 piano engines and 2 sample synth sound engines, so you can have up to 4 different sounds layered all together. And of course, if that's not enough, you can always MIDI this to other boards and have more sounds that way as well. In the sample synth section, they've added the Spitfire string quartet, and it sounds really cool. Let me see if I can get to that. Yeah, there we go. And of course, there's so many things you can do to change that. That would be for another video. And one of the coolest things they did is each one of these faders, each one has their own complete section independent from the other 3 sounds of all the effects that this thing offers. So you've got your stomp box effects called Mod 1, Mod 2, and then you've got your choice of amplifiers. You've got compression, and you've got EQ, and you've got delays. And speaking of delays, there's now 2 ping pong delays instead of 1. And then reverb, and global reverb, or you can have, so the amount of each layer, you can send how much you want to go to the reverb section. Now that is so cool. So once you get that one sound, that first one done to everything you want, go to your next sound, and it's got its own set of effects, different and unique from the first one. Show me another keyboard that does that for 4 different independent sounds. You're not going to find it. It is so cool. Now, usually, when you have keyboards and you have more than one sound, they share effects. The effects you choose, it's going to be applied to each and every single unique sound that you've chosen. Not with this. Everything is independent of the other sounds. So this whole effects section, think about it as having 4 effects sections identical to this. Each sound has its own unique effects section. That is so cool. I just cannot get over how cool that is. Now, this was taken from the Nord Stage 4. That was the first to offer this. And the Nord Stage series, of course, that's way up there in price, but you are getting a feature from the Nord Stage into the Nord Piano 6, and it is a feature so unique, so great. It's just that makes that a very, very, very good portion of what you need to consider when you buy this. And that's one of the questions you might want to ask yourself. If you have a Nord Piano 5, is it worth upgrading to the 6? Well, aside from the faders and the unique sound effects section, yeah, it could be. It very well could be. You can do so much more with sound design now that you have separate control of each individual layer. Spin is not exactly new, but on the Nord Piano 6, they have a rate and an amount setting. On the 5, they just had rate. So let me just take anything basically from the sample synth section. Let's turn that on, and we'll take this and choose spin. Okay, let's add a rate. And we're going to add an amount. Okay, that is really cool. Now, the key action on the Nord Piano 5 was the Footswitch TP40H. And while they didn't come out and say which particular action they're using here, I believe it is pretty much identical, and I believe it is the Footswitch TP40H. Now, the H indicates heavy, and that's what you need for a piano. There's also an M, and there's also an L. This is the H version. Exactly what you need for a piano, yet not that bad, because when you go ahead and play parts like organ, it actually works out quite well with that as well. Now, some more differences for those that are interested in how many knobs, buttons, sliders, all that they have. The Nord Piano 6 has 21 knobs and 48 buttons, and the Nord Piano 5, for anybody that's interested, had 18 knobs and 42 buttons. So 6 more buttons than the 5, and 3 more knobs than the 5. So total buttons and knobs, 69 on the Nord Piano 6 versus 60 on the Nord Piano 5. Not that it really means anything, it's just a little statistic that maybe some of you might find interesting. Memory also has been increased. You had 400 slots for your sounds on the Nord Piano 5. Now they've upped that to 576. That's pretty substantial. So, step in the right direction there. And more effects as well. And ping pong delays. The Nord Piano 5 had 1. This one has 2. So you got an extra ping pong delay effect here. Now, also on the delay section, the Nord Piano 6 has a feedback knob here, which is so cool. Now you can really turn in the amount of feedback. You can fine-tune it. As for the Nord Piano 5, it had feedback, but it was 3 buttons. 3 different buttons, as opposed to a knob. So much more control this way. Now, the Nord Piano 6 now has a spring reverb. Very cool. And in addition to that, they now have a pre-delay setting, so you can actually fine-tune that in as well. Also, on the pedal, the Nord Piano 6 comes with a triple pedal, basically. The standard left, center, right. But it's different now, because that has its own jack. So when you have that plugged in there, you've got that serves all those 3 functions, but it's now an optic connection. You can really feel and hear the difference when you apply that damper. It is much more accurate. And also, with this new triple pedal, it also can be used for other things. The left and the middle can be used for like page up, page down, and other kind of things. So when you're using that triple pedal, that frees up a couple of more jacks in the back. It frees up the sustain jack, and it frees up the expression jack so that you can use those for other things, whatever you want to use them for. Whereas on the Nord Piano 5, you only had those 2 jacks. And also, the Nord Piano 6 has a Footswitch Jack. So now you have basically a separate sustain jack. you have an expression jack, and you have a Footswitch Jack, in addition to having its own jack for the new triple pedal that it comes with. So various improvements here. Now, that is just kind of the bottom line of what the improvements are. And like I said at the beginning, I want to focus on the piano section. And that's this section right here. Okay, so let's focus on the piano section, which is this section right here. We're going to cover this whole thing. Obviously, we have the sliders and the buttons underneath. You press a button to activate this, and you have the LED tower to show you how much volume you have. I'm going to go into live mode right now, okay, because I have something preset here. I've got the Grand Imperial on A, and I've got the white grand on layer B. So let me just turn off layer B. We're just going to play the Grand Imperial right now. Okay, so what I have right now, the way I've got this set up, I have got the Grand Imperial on layer A, and I've got it so that I have the white grand on layer B. So I can play either one of these separately, or I can combine them, and we're going to get into that. This is really cool stuff. So right now, I've got the Grand Imperial. Now, what I like about the Grand Imperial is that deep bass that it has. Now, let's go over to the white grand, and we're just going to play that, not the Grand Imperial anymore. That's on my layer B. What I like about the white grand is it's clear and it's crisp and it is great. So now, if I go ahead and play both at the same time, we're going to get a blend of both the Grand Imperial and of the white grand. Sounds totally different, and it's actually such a nice sounding piano when you combine them both. But like I said, I like the bass on the Grand Imperial. I like the crispness and the clearness on the white grand. So let's take this a step farther. Rather than combining both so that each key plays both of them, I'm going to make it so that I'm going to have the Grand Imperial on the bottom, and we're going to have the white grand on the top. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to split the keyboard, and it is so easy to do. If you look over here on layer B, you're going to see two LEDs, green, that say low and up. It stands for lower and upper. And the same thing with layer B, same low and up. They're both lit, meaning, actually, let's turn off layer B. Let's just deal with layer A so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. You got the whole keyboard here. Okay, they're both lit. Now, anything that's printed beneath a button or knob or slider or whatever, you hold the shift key to get to that. So I'm going to hold the shift key and press this. And now look, low is lit up. So the lower half of the keyboard is going to be my layer A. See, it stops here. I can change that split point. And the cool thing about Nord is this green LED shows you where your split point is. And if I wanted to change that, I just hold the split and move to the next. Okay? So now I move the split here. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different pre-programmed split points that you could set this for. So right now I'm just using the lower half, and if I just move the upper half, it changes. All right, so with that one switch for layer A, I can have the full keyboard, or I can have just the lower part of the split point, or the upper part of the split point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it on lower. And for right now, I'm going to shut off layer A, and I'm going to turn on layer B. And you'll notice the whole thing. I've got the whole keyboard. We're going to do the same thing here, just lower. We hit the split point, nothing on the top, okay? And if we do the other part, just the top. Okay, so now we got just the top. Here's what I'm getting at. Let's turn layer A on, and we're going to have just the lower half, and that's going to be the Bosendorfer Grand Imperial, because we like the bass on how that sounds, deep. Then we're going to turn on layer B, and it's going to be just the upper. So from here, this is the Grand Imperial, and up here, this is the White Grand. So I've got two different pianos, the lower half being the Grand Imperial, and the upper half being the Steinway White Grand. It's a Steinway B, actually. Actually, I want the split point over here, so let's change that. Split position is C4. How cool is that? And in addition, I have individual volume controls of each one of those pianos. So that is one of the coolest things yet. And you can see why I like that so much, because the possibilities are limitless. And I'm not even covering the effects today. I am just doing the piano section, this section right here. So now we know about the sliders. We know about splits. And in addition to these splits, and maybe not so much with piano, maybe with two other sounds, basically, here's your split point. And going from one to the other, it could be a very abrupt change. It'll be a subtle change here because there are two pianos. So basically, they have something called crossfade. And if we're going to get into that, we're going to hold the shift key down to get into crossfade. Okay? So basically, you see it's yellow, it's crossfade. That means that it slowly blends into the other piano. So you've got basically an octave or so here where half of the octave is both on the lower part, and the upper part is actually both too. But one of the layers fades out as the other fades in. And the same thing here, another one fades out as the new one fades in. So it's more of a smooth transition. And you can actually extend it so you have more than an octave gradually crossfading from one sound to another. See, so I have the crossfade is basically 6 semitones on each side, and if you have the second choice, it's 12 semitones on each side. So you get that gradual fade in, fade out. All right, let's turn off layer B. Let's just work with layer A for a moment. And you'll notice down here, you have octave shift buttons. So, and if I press that, it goes higher. go back to where it should be. Okay, and this is really cool because maybe you've chosen a flute for one of your layers and you're playing it down here, but what it really sounds like it should be played up here, where you don't have that part free for whatever reason because you've chosen to have another instrument there. So to move it to that space of where it should be and you're playing it down here, that's what that would come in for. Or maybe you've got something really cool on the left and you want to play a cool bass on the right. Well, let's move the right. You've got a bass chosen. Let's move that down so that you're playing up here, but the sound that you're hearing is like an octave or 2 or 3 octaves lower. And that octave shift is separate for A and for B. So layer A, you can have the octave move 2 octaves up, and layer B, maybe you might have that 1 octave down. You can play around with this. See, these are not, where you have an octave shift and it applies to the entire sound set. Nope, it's per layer. Very, very cool. Okay, and beneath that, where you get to it with the shift key because it's written below the buttons, you've got sustain pedal and volume pedal. So basically, we're on A right now, layer A. If I have the sustain pedal lit, that means when I use the sustain pedal, okay, I'm holding down the sustain pedal, obviously. All right, now, if I turn sustain off, I'm holding the sustain pedal now, but I'm not getting sustain. I can do the same thing with layer B. I can have the sustain pedal on or off. It's not like your choice applies to both or the entire keyboard. It applies to individual layers. So I can have a piano, say, on layer A, and I want sustain for that. And actually, let's go ahead and split the keyboard again because I want to demonstrate this to you. Okay, on layer B, I am going to turn off the sustain pedal. Okay, so now when I'm playing it, I've got both sounds activated, A and B. And look at what's happening. The sustain pedal, since I have it on for layer A, but when we get to the upper side of the split, where I have the white grand, I've turned the sustain pedal off, so it doesn't apply to that. Very cool, right? So it can play stuff like this. Very cool. So you can play around with that. And you can even have it so that you have not a split, but the entire keyboard. Okay? So what you're hearing sustained is the Grand Imperial, but not the White Grand. How cool is that? All right, let's go to the next thing here, dynamic compression. So let's just use one layer here. Okay, dynamic compression. Right now, I'm playing something soft. Or hard. Okay. And if I go ahead and put dynamic compression to 1, whether I'm playing soft or hard, there's not that much of a dynamic difference that you can hear. So let's go ahead and try 2. I'm playing very light and very hard. And as you might have guessed, when you choose Dynamic 3, basically so now it doesn't matter how hard or how soft you're playing these keys, you can hear it. And this is good for a band context because sometimes you're playing piano low and it's not going to quite come out through the amplifiers compared with all the other instruments that you're competing against in the band. So that's what that's for. It just makes it better to be heard in a mix. And of course, you don't want any dynamic compression at all when you're just doing piano by itself. Make sense? Then there's keyboard touch. We all know about that. And here we have 3 choices: light and normal and heavy. I've got it on normal right now. And if I move it to light, I don't need as much pressure to get the same kind of stuff. And if I have it on heavy, of course, it's going to take more pressure, so you can play harder and you're going to hear it. So it's a matter of preference. I've got it on normal, but basically you would put this on light if you have arthritis, and it takes. There's a lot of places where you use it light. This is just one example. Have arthritis, you can't strike the keys as hard. You put it on light. If you tend to have an iron fist, or some people think they have more control by choosing the heavy setting, you'd put it on heavy, and so on. Okay. Then we get to Unison. All right, now Unison, there's 3 choices. It's more kind of like a chorus effect. So, and usually with chorus, it's basically 2 pianos and one of them's detuned to give it that effect. Well, they're doing it now with just 1. You don't need to have 2 pianos now to do that. So let's give it a chorus of 1. And 2. And 3. That's the highest detuning on 3. Turn it off and we're back to normal. Then there's timbre. So it's basically kind of an extra set of switches for EQ. And again, I'm not getting into the effects here today in this video. I'm just covering the piano section here in detail. So basically, here's soft. And if I choose mid, so we've got a boost in the mid-range, and bright is, like giving it a lot more treble in the EQ. And then there's dynamic 1 and 2. That won't work with this. This is set up for basically digital pianos, and I'll show you that in a minute. So that's what timbre is about. And over here, we've got the piano select. You have got a knob for model, and you've got a button. Now, this button picks the category of piano you want. You've got 6 categories. You've got grand, upright, electric, clav, digital, and miscellaneous. So just because we're in the piano section does not limit us to just pianos. We got some other cool stuff. The thing is, they're basically keyboards. So starting out, we've got this grand category selected. So you can see we've got the Grand Imperial. And if we turn the knob, we go to the next one here, the Studio Grand. And if we turn it again, we go to the next one, which is a Bright Grand. And again, there's 8 currently set up, and you can have so much more. You just go to the Nord website or fire up the Nord Sound Manager, and you can bring in more pianos into your Nord. But basically, we're looking at just one at a time. If I go ahead and hold the Shift key down and I turn this knob, now I can see all the pianos in the Grand category right here. So it just kind of makes it easier to choose from. So, and if we go to, say, Velvet Grand, Grand Imperial, we've heard all that. Now, there's also an Electric Grand in this category. I'm not sure if that's a Yamaha CP80 or what, but it sounds really cool. Love it. Now, we go to the next category, which are uprights. And you can see the uprights here. Here's an amber upright. And here's a felt upright. And a pearl upright. And a Bambino. I'm not going to play everything, but just to give you an idea. Okay, and let's go to the next category, which is electric. You might recognize some of these from the 60s. We got like Wurlitzers and Rhodes, that kind of thing. It's really cool. There's a lot of choices here. Pretty close. Wurlitzer. So, I mean, you can experiment all day with this and you're not going to get bored. This is so cool. Go to the next one, digital. So we've got digital clavinets and Italian harpsichord, all that kind of stuff. This is really cool. French harpsichord, Italian harpsichord, all that. Okay. All right, let's go down here to a harpsichord. All right, now I mentioned about Dyno 1 and 2. It works on the dynamics piano section, not all of them. So this is Clav here. Soft, mid, Dyno 2, right? And I guess Dyno 1. So cool. Anyway, let's get into the, that was Clavs. Let's get into digital. That's like a Yamaha DX7, and you can recognize that. It's pretty recognizable. And let's go ahead and try some other stuff. Hybrid. And the last is miscellaneous, where you've got a marimba and a vibraphone. So that is pretty much it for the piano section. I have one more thing to show you here. On the timbre here, there's something written below this, and that is piano info. So let's go back to the grand, okay? We're going to choose a white grand. And what we're going to do is hold down this shift and get to piano info, and look at this. It tells you what the piano is. It is a white grand. It's a Steinway B. And what version is in this actual Nord Piano 6 and how much space it takes up in here. Okay? Very, very cool. And as you go along with any other piano choices, here's a Grand Imperial. Like I said, let's see more information about that. It's a Grand Imperial Bosendorfer 290, and over here it says large. There's different scales here. They've got small, large, medium, extra large. So basically, the larger it is, that's something I'll get into for another video, but for right now, just know that that exists. So basically, that is the entire piano section control on this. There's obviously more. There's the sample synth, there's the program section, and then there's the effects. And they're not as bad as it looks. You look at these things at the beginning and you think, oh my God, there's too many. It's like a cockpit of an airplane. But you get used to it. And I'm here at the point where the piano section alone is just so straightforward once you work with it for a while. And a couple weeks, you should have no problem with this. And there is just so much more to the keyboard. And again, I've just been showing you piano. And we can turn on sample synth along with it. I hope this has been helpful for you and that you learned something. And if you want to get some good pricing, check the description below. And I will see you in the next video. Piano Man Chuck. Peace out. Thanks for watching.